Hi, my name is Zoe Cannon, and this is my speech for Communications 100. This is my audience, 5 of my family members. All right. 2 to 3 out of 1,000 children will be born deaf or hard of hearing in the United States every year. 90% of these deaf children will be born to hearing parents. These hearing parents probably have no clue of deaf culture, deaf identity, or deaf education options that are available to their children. It is very important that these hearing parents get educated about options for their child's education, as they probably want the best for their students. There are 3 main options that will be discussed in this speech. That is mainstreaming education option for the deaf, residential education for the deaf, and non-residential education for the deaf. To begin, mainstreaming education for the deaf is when you integrate hearing and deaf students into a public school. This option can be very beneficial for deaf students as well as not positive for these deaf students. To begin, deaf students will be integrated with these hearing students as they will with hearing people in society, as they will all throughout their life. So this really gives them an opportunity to get equipped with the tools and knowledge that they need to communicate effectively in the real world. One bad thing about deaf people going to public schools is that most of the time they are going to be put into special education, even if they are not diagnosed with a hearing, or not hearing, but a learning disability. But they are placed in these special education because they lack the oral and lip reading skills. And so that sometimes can affect their learning rate because they have to be put into a slower program. Deaf people that attend public school will also have a less likely chance of having a higher reading level than those who attend a deaf school. Second, I would like to talk about residential schools for the deaf. These schools are going to be live-in schools, kind of like a dorm or college setting or a boarding school option. This is where they will live there either 24/7 and go home for holidays and breaks, or stay there throughout the week and go home on the weekends. This is going to be very optimal for deaf students, as they will have people like them surrounding them, and they will have teachers that are like them teaching them, and they will be using a language that is visual and optimal for deaf communication. Deaf residential schools are also designed around deaf people. This means their classrooms, their dormitories, even down to bells for letting class out. They use visual spacing to better communicate with one another and better teach their students. The last school or education option for the deaf that I would like to talk about is the non-residential option, which is very similar to the residential option. It's just that the students will come on home after schooling. The classrooms are going to be more deaf-friendly than a public school option. This kind of school is also going to be more optimal for younger students, as they probably don't want to be in a live-in school. They probably want to come on home and be with their families at nighttime. To conclude my speech, we have discussed 3 types of deaf education for deaf students: the mainstreaming, residential schools, and non-residential schools. It is very important that these hearing parents of deaf students, really educate themselves on the options that are available to their students so they can find the best option for their family.